So with that, we're going to spend a little bit of time sharing a bit about where we are with building renovations. We know that a lot of you last kind of heard big details about this in January, February, and then it might have seemed like there wasn't a lot kind of going on. Behind the scenes, there was a lot going on getting us to where we are today. So we're going to share a little bit about where we've been, where we are, and then we're going to allow for some feedback time from each of you. And then we're also going to tell you a little bit about where we're going in next steps here. We're going to be looking at it from kind of two perspectives all the way through: our architectural plans, and then also our funding aspects of that. So real quick, in case you haven't been around for this, we're going to start about where we've been. So back in 2018, we had at that point a pretty big flood in the basement, you might remember. At that point, we found underneath the stage, we were removing asbestos, all that good stuff, and we were trying to decide, do we really put this stage back or not? And at that point, that's when we said it would be really helpful to have a long-range plan about where we're going so that when we make renovations and when we need to respond to issues, we know exactly where we're headed. So with that, then, we held in early 2019, I think 2 or 3, if somebody remembers, sessions. You can see actually right here in this space where we asked all of our neighbors, our space use groups, and our members to share what you would imagine this could look like moving forward. We came up with big, long lists: office space, worship spaces, accessibility, education, space use outside groups, fellowship, bathroom, kitchen, balcony. We went through all of these different things to then compile all of that together and begin what's called a master planning process. So then we hired Blender Architecture firm. They're right here in Chicago, and they helped us kind of look at different aspects of what we wanted to focus on for the comprehensive building plan. We started looking at things like programming and space and size and how many people we need for this and that. Then we also went and we did preliminarily, went to the building department. We reviewed, figuring out, do we need a sprinkler system? Do we not? What kind of egresses do we need? What kind of things start to come into play when we start moving things around? After we got through all of that, we landed on 2 different kind of schematics that we could begin talking about. So A and B. So this was early 2020. At that point, we looked a little bit more differently at design A and design B. And the real big things that were centering around these 2 schemes was, where are we going to put this lift or elevator? There's no functional way that we can do a ramp into the building because of how long and how high it has to go and ADA requirements. So it would necessitate putting in a lift or an elevator. We looked at what's called a Lula lift. It will function, it will feel like an elevator, but it's actually a lift and it's a little bit smaller, but you'll press the buttons, the doors will open, you'll walk in, you'll press the button, doors will close, will go up, all that kind of good stuff. Ideally, we really kind of wanted to have it at the far southwest or southeast corner, because that's kind of the main hub. You'll see that we went through and we spent a good amount of money exploring if that is actually functionally possible. The long and the short of it is that head height room, the ways that we've got like a lot of the stone structures around there, it really wasn't going to pan out well. It wasn't going to fit. It wasn't going to be ADA compliant, and it was going to cost almost twice as much as doing something over here. So for a lot of different reasons, we said this wasn't going to work. It also was going to mean that it was going to go into the sanctuary. So a portion of our sanctuary was going to be obstructed by the lift. So we did end up landing on design B, which ends up putting the lift over in this corner here. So that's in the northeast corner of the fellowship hall. And we began exploring that a bit more. Then COVID happened, and the city leveraged on us $30,000 worth of water bills because we didn't have a water meter. And so we needed to kind of expedite this water meter process. And so we put in a brand new water supply line that is correctly sized for what we're going to have to do, so we don't have to do that again. And we also put in that gathering garden. And so this was actually phase 1 of our comprehensive building plan. We've actually accomplished phase 1 already as of today. When we last came to you in early 2023, this was the general drawing that we were getting your feedback on. And so we heard a lot of your feedback. We talked to community groups. We talked to neighbors. We talked to congregation members, staff. We got lots of feedback. And from all that feedback, we brought that back to our architect with the Comprehensive Building Plan Task Force. And today, we're now sharing with you what this next step is going to look like before we get into that nitty gritty of like, now we're actually starting to draw exactly where these walls are landing and exactly where what carpet color is, what tile is. We don't have all the carpet color, tile, light fixtures, all of that's not really something that we've talked about. We're just looking at kind of where walls are falling, where ingress, kind of coming in, and egress, so going out, kind of where all that kind of stands. So that's a very brief overview of where we are. And any questions about the history before we get into where we are, and then we want to hear about what you're thinking about that. Lovely. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to the chair of the Comprehensive Building Plan Task Force, Jonathan. But before I do that, actually, I wanted to just name who's on the Comprehensive Building Plan Task Force so you can see them in the room. So we've got Rick over here, if you just want to wave. And we have Amy Jewell. And we have Jonathan Meyer, who you're going to hear from in a minute. And then who's not here today is Nora Millets. She's also on that, along with both of our architects from Blender Architecture. So with that, turn it over to you.
All right. I'll let you. Hi, Jonathan. I am an architect. I am not the architect for this space. That being said, design is an iterative process, right? So we're coming today to present where we are in this long journey. During the design process, there's typically 4 phases. So there's conceptual design, which we've done up until this point, schematic design, which you're going to see the culmination of that phase. Next, we get into design development and then construction documents and then construction itself. So this is, like Jason said, going to set the spaces, right? We're thinking spatially. Things are going to change here and there. This won't be the final iteration of what happens. As we encounter problems or challenges during construction, things will change. And then also as we hear comments, we can still make changes to things if there's something egregious that somebody sees or even that, or maybe it wasn't even considered yet. We've done this a lot, but at the same time, we want to have an open dialogue and we want to try and meet everyone's goals for this space accordingly. That being said, I like to think of design as inputs and outputs. So it's a bunch of levers, right? So you can, if we wanted to create something that was a solution entirely in one direction, we push that lever. However, there's other levers, right? So we can solve problems for our congregation by pushing a lever in completely the one direction, and we get an output. For our space users, they might have another input, and then we have to pull back on our lever a little bit in order to accommodate. So this is kind of the conclusion of all these levers and all the conversations that we've pulled up until now. But we do want to hear feedback. I was once told design is a blood sport. So, if there's comments, there's no hard feelings here. This is about getting things correct, because once we get into next phases, it gets harder to do that. So what we're looking at here is the ground floor. So this is, we'll call it the street level, right? So if you're standing out on the street, Lemoyne, this is the gathering garden. That stage is already complete. And then what you see up here is what's being proposed for the outside. So I guess I would start by saying that to the outside of the building, nothing is going to change visually. You won't see anything different than what it looks like today, other than this garden looking more composed, similar to the gathering garden. So what we want to do is create an ADA access entrance. And it's important for this entrance to be an equal entrance for people that need that entrance. But at the same time, it's not the primary entrance. The main doors to the church stay the same. How we enter on Sunday mornings, going up the stairs, stays the same. Those doors will be the main access point for all intents and purposes, unless there is something happening after hours where that's not appropriate, or if there's only one person in the church. So one of the things that we've talked about and that you'll see in the floor plan is really thinking about security. Right now, access into the building comes very fluidly. And once you're in the building, you can go anywhere in the building. And that's something that is problematic for staff, it's problematic for community users. And so we wanted to kind of address that. So with this entrance, We want it to be a very nice entrance, an equal entrance, but again, not the main entrance. The goal is that if you need to use that entrance, you can. It'll be a pleasant experience, but we really want people coming up the main stairs, experiencing the church, coming in on Sunday morning. We want to be considerate for our neighbors. And so, pushing that too far close to the neighbors is not something that we want to do. Again, it'll be nice. We'll have signage directing people to that location, but not really the main event. Once you get to the lower level, so that staircase on the outside, that door, will have a upstairs and a downstairs. So if you can imagine this corner right here, these 3 windows are those 3 windows right there. Again, those aren't touched. We don't want to touch anything on the outside as much as we can. And this would be the accessible lift. So that would go down and that would go up. That's essentially halfway down here, right? On the lower level, after a programming exercise, we felt it was great to have the office space immediately there. This is all open. This is the glass front to the office space. So you come down those stairs, and right here is the office assistant. So greeted, FedEx packages, things like that. It's very intuitive because, again, wayfinding right now, if somebody comes into the church, the office is tucked all the way in the back. Not the most desirable thing. This is a very intuitive way to kind of encounter that. We had a family bathroom, which would have a shower, baby changing station, accessible toilet, accessible sink. And this is really, if there's staff in the building that are biking to church and they want to use that, great. If there's a youth group spending the night here, as we do that often, that would be a shower, a bathroom that can be used for that type of purpose. The list goes on, but we think that this kind of checks a lot of boxes. Across the way from that is the multi-user toilet restroom. And the idea here is that, much like the bathrooms right now, this is open to everyone. However, different than the bathrooms now, the partitions here, the doors here are full height doors, full height partitions. It's individual spaces. And this is a really, I can geek out on this all day because this is really when we talk about welcoming restrooms and multi-user restrooms, creating these so that everyone feels comfortable, but also that it is open for everyone. And one of the reasons that it's kind of designed the way that it is because without doors, you can circulate in here, you can circulate out of here. Think more like an elementary school, middle school. Not having doors, there's no lines of sight into the restroom, but you can kind of meander your way in there and out of there. Also, 2 points of there's an exit and an entrance, so you can kind of use that interchangeably. Baby changing station, and then multi-user restrooms. Outside of that, we have kind of what we're calling the central hall, if you will. So we looked at a few iterations where the circulation was a little bit different on this floor, but really this was kind of an evolution of trying to maximize the space for our meeting spaces, as well as creating a pre-function space. So when we look at the number of occupants that we can have in the building and what we can use these spaces for, it really started to boil out to this idea that a pre-function space to kind of support these other rooms. And the example that I like to use because of my own experiences is Vacation Bible School. If each of these rooms is set up for a different class and it's set up for a different age group, when you show up on Monday morning or whatever and you sign your child in or you come in to use this space, this would be desks, this would be sign-in, this would be where you get your t-shirt, things like that. This would also be, if we're doing something like this could be a banquet right here, right? So we can set up food out here, and it's wide enough. The reason that we've shown it this way is that it's wide enough to get around it, you can circulate around it, and you can support it from the kitchen. When not in use in that way, this would be soft seating, open seating. If you're here for a meeting late at night and that space is being used and you're waiting to use it, this would be soft seating where you're kind of hanging out and sitting there. And we like this idea of a central hall where everyone's brought together. One of the nice things about this also is that it connects to these windows up at the front. So this is the gathering garden right here. These windows currently have grates over them. They're old windows, but when those get redone and they're transparent and they're clear, you can imagine kind of the connectivity between this space and that space. Seeing people out on the street being able to look in, seeing activity inside, it starts to make that connection between community outside and our community inside and kind of drawing that interesting connection. So immediately after that, this is the stair tower in the far corner. As Jason mentioned, this is load-bearing masonry. So those big, tall bell towers, are all weight bearing on masonry there. So we're not putting any new penetrations in that because it's very expensive and very difficult. And we just kind of got to the point that, okay, we had to look at other solutions elsewhere. Immediately next to that, we're calling this, it's for all intents and purposes, a nursery space, but really a children's space. The door for that down around the corner, probably going to be a little bit louder, a little bit more active. We're showing a window into that space. So again, if you're a parent, you can kind of take a look at what's going in there if your children are playing or whatnot. We'll talk about it when we get to the second floor, but this is the relocated skylight here would be brought down to this level and kind of introduced as an element and recapturing some of the authenticity of the space. Back here, we have the large meeting room space. So this is a movable partition. This is a meeting room. This is a meeting room. But of course, we can take down the partition. And then it becomes a very large area where we can do something like this. The kitchen stays in the corner underneath over here. But we reorganize it, make it a full commercial kitchen so that user groups from the outside can use it, but us as well. And then we maintain this back staircase that kind of comes up to support the fellowship hall. So that is the first, or the ground floor in a nutshell. Office spaces, and you kind of talked about this office being, there's a meeting room in here so that, for committee groups, things like that, we don't need to occupy space elsewhere in the building and kind of take up rentable square footage when we're having smaller user groups. And again, things here shown are graphical in nature. Is this exactly the table that's going to be used? No. Is this exactly the office arrangement of things? No, it's all iterative. It's going to change. We'll have a moment to come back to these for questions and comments. The first floor of the building. So this is this level of the building. That staircase at the corner, you would take the stairs up, and then this corner over here becomes a narthex unit. And so that connects directly to the narthex outside of the sanctuary. Something to note here is the doors here and here. And again, that goes back to security. So we can essentially lock down this part of the building, so that if you are entering after hours and you take the stairs up, there's nowhere for you to go in the church. You have to go downstairs. So think about that when we're using this as a community space after hours and just controlling flow. The other thing that we kind of went through was, when you come up these stairs, originally we had thought about spilling directly into the fellowship hall, and that saves us a little bit of space. However, you can't use the fellowship hall independently of activities then. So really we're gaining another usable space that's rentable on this level by providing doors there. We are adding an accessible restroom, which would be over here, kind of tucked behind the elevator. In the thought here, we looked at other iterations that again, kind of use the existing restroom in Pastor Jason's office. However, that's in the far back corner. So if you're leaving, in the middle of service to use the restroom, we didn't want to have to force people to go downstairs, to use a lift in many cases, to go downstairs to get to an accessible restroom, or to traverse the entire fellowship hall, go all the way back to the corner of the building. That didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And so we batted that around a lot, but we think that this makes the most sense. Also being outside of the fellowship hall, for an event like this, you would leave, use the restroom here. It's not part of this space, it's outside of this space. Reorganizing Pastor Jason's office and the sacristy space currently to just become kind of a full-blown sacristy. The restroom that's back there remains, but this would be where robes, things like that are stored from that far bell tower. That far bell tower also gets a little bit of a makeover just to make it, right now it's packed, but we would add another level and pack it even more. What we're showing here is just that long-term, eventually, there's a plan to address accessibility for the altar area and making that accessible. This is an iteration. It is not the iteration. Anything we do in the sanctuary is kind of a whole different conversation that we want to approach differently with much more nuance than kind of this high level. And that's coming at a much later stage anyways, but we're kind of, it will be addressed. We have plans to address it, but we think that that's a little bit different conversation since it is happening in the sanctuary. On the bell tower level, using the north bell tower over here, packing that with space, adding levels so that we can add a lot of things in there, storage-wise again for Christmas, things like that. AV booth, choir loft, also kind of an undefined scope at the time. We're gonna develop that unless there's things I don't know. But
so the existing risers that are on there will be removed, so it'll all be a flat level at that point. And so that can be used flexibly, possibly as another meeting space, possibly used for choir, for musicians. It could be used for an area for youth, who, want to have a designated area, but it would all become one level and could have flexible seating and chairs there.
And that is color coded this color because it is the last phase. So in the scheme of things, as we go through that is kind of longer term. The immediates are more what's happening out here. So that being said, these are the two levels, the sanctuary level and then also the lower level in kind of summary. So I don't know, Jason, is there anything that I missed that you would like to reiterate or focus on? Yeah, please.
Along here in the fellowship hall, on this far end over here, you're gonna imagine there's gonna be like two on each bookends where how we're conceiving it now, some like big cabinets there. And then there's going to be like a buffet along here that includes a dishwasher and a small sink. What this means, we don't have to carry glasses up and down the stairs. You're done drinking your coffee, you put it in the dishwasher, we run it, and you unload it later, right? We can keep extra food up here. We can keep plates. We can keep silverware. So a lot of because I think this is really important how we use the space on Sunday. A lot of if your fellowship goes up and down to the kitchen, unless you're like warming up something big in the oven or you've got like big bowls that you need to wash later, most of the time you're just going to be staying on this level. We could imagine a coffee machine that's plumbed in, right? So you just hit the button, the hot water starts coming out. Similar to kind of what we have, but utilizing that a bit better. Having more storage underneath, storage on the sides, lockable things, so we don't have to worry about like other groups like using our stuff, right? I think another thing, just to point out, I'm trying to remember what it was.
And I'll interrupt for 1 second. The other thing to note here is the fellowship hall is getting a little bit smaller. However, every time that we've talked about this, we're adding a storage room off the end of it so that we're not storing kind of workout mats in the middle of this room. That gets put away. And really, when we think about the space that we're losing by having table storage sitting out here, that becomes more usable and kind of a better looking and more functional.
Yeah. I think the other thing to mention, just to explain a little bit more about what's going on here. We tried so hard to not have to touch the stained glass window here. It's just by the time you put a bathroom here and a lift and the stairs, there's really no way that we can get all of that in a functional, usable way without needing to remove that. So when Jonathan was noting downstairs this relocated skylight, we're kind of imagining this skylight right here with all of the beauty that it has, maybe behind some plexiglass or glass, maybe it's lit, maybe it just lets natural light, but that we allow this liturgical and religious art to be part of the space where children are growing up and they're experiencing that and they're having connections with that. And it also becomes, as you're walking down the aisle here from the elevator, you're kind of looking at it right ahead. So we're going to preserve that as much as we can, knowing that unfortunately it's a 1906 building, right? There's going to have to be some give and take on some things. What that also means is that rolling divider that's right there, the one right behind Heather, that one will partially be in the new narthex area and then will be probably drywalled over. It will still look very similar on the other side. Some of the woodwork will still be there. We're gonna make sure that aesthetically it looks good in the sanctuary space. But to be true to what the intention of that rolling divider was, kind of just trying to like half it or something like that, is not really going to carry the character of it. It also then puts it in this place where we've got these two rolling dividers here that will still be usable, still be functional, and they also pair well with the stained glass windows. Taking out one skylight and one rolling divider, keeping two of the skylights and two of the rolling dividers. So too downstairs in the office area, we've got those rolling dividers all along here right now that go like into the nursery, education room. We're actually going to preserve 3 of those downstairs, and they're going to be in the office area where we could have them up. There's going to be bookshelves in there maybe, or some kind of other storage things. We could close them up. We could keep them open. It can kind of be this space where we can still have those rolling dividers, which are an important part of the architect who designed this building. He, a pretty well-known architect who worked in warehouses in Chicago. So that's part of the reason why he put these in here. That was something he knew. He knew how warehouse rolling dividers were. So we're going to keep that. That's an important historical feature in that. I think if there's some other, you'll notice these two windows right here, we're actually reclaiming windows. These are currently in the kitchen area and they're totally closed over. And so we're reclaiming a couple windows to allow more light in, to restore it back to probably what it originally looked like. And I think an important thing to note can you go back one slide? When you look at this grouping legend here, we tried to put where there was not only real energy and support behind it. We know ADA accessibility is a huge thing. And important for us as a congregation and the community. There are then some other things that kind of naturally go. That, for example, we can't really do the north and south meeting rooms until we move the kitchen. We can't do remember, kitchen's here right now. So we can't really do this until we get the kitchen moved out of the way. Now we can't move the kitchen here until we move the toilets here, because remember we have toilets here and park kitchen here. So we gotta get the toilets here, and we can't rebuild this stairwell, which is gonna take away the office space until we build the office. So we gotta have the office built so we can get us out of there, so we can rebuild the staircase and put the kitchen here. So these all kind of go in an order, and they kind of have to go that way, especially when we start getting towards the end here. So as much as we would really, really love to, do this right away and get some of the bigger spaces, functionally, we're not going to be able to do that just because of how our building is currently designed. So that's why it is in the kind of grouping that we're doing here. And you're going to see in a moment, we're going to talk a little bit about how we're imagining the next phase of our comprehensive building plan capital campaign is going to include 2, 3, so these windows in these spaces, and at least the toilets here. But ideally, if we can get it monetarily, we want to do the whole green space. And this would be now our second phase. So we'd look at ADA accessibility, including all the bathrooms will be completely ADA accessible, upgrades here, and then along with the nursery and one of the meeting rooms there. You also notice, because I know some people, I'm just thinking of all the things that people have been like, what about this? What about this? What about this? I want to point them out. Here's a washer dryer here. So we can start washing our linens here. We can start washing all of our tablecloths. There's still a janitor's closet here. This EP thing, there's actually 2 of them here. That's an ejector pit. That's going to solve our flooding problem. So what it's going to do is it's going to take everything, it's going to drain into there, and then it's going to eject it up overhead. And so it would have to the streets would be need to be flooded up to our ankles and knees. Right. We're talking the whole city of Chicago is down now, right? So this is a real important part that I know a lot of people are bringing up after the July rains. And we did go through and looked at all of these different spaces. This is what actually took a little bit longer than originally we had hoped, because what we wanted to do is make sure that the programming that we have, both for church events, but also for outside groups, really matched our needs. So we have, and I've got some over here if you want to look at them, we have these all drawn with banquet tables, and we've got them drawn with U-shaped tables or round or lecture style, and we put in there where the projectors are, and we kind of try to imagine, can we get the capacity needs for each of these rooms individually, combined, to really make sure that all the existing groups that we have and all of our existing ministries are supported. And the long answer to that, I can take you through all that if you really want, is yes. This design plan does now, and the earlier iterations did not. And that's why it took us a little bit longer to get to you guys so we can make sure that it fits correct. Also down here, we're imagining along here, maybe there's built-ins here that are lockable for space use groups, or maybe there's bookcases here, or maybe there's benches for kids. There's some additional space that we can use along here. But I think you'll notice that the staircase that was over here, that will be removed to give us more room in the permanent storage room there. And then we're adding this staircase. There are still some things, for full transparency, that we're working on and that we're going to cover in the next process with our architect. And that's mainly, we're looking at this staircase. We want to make sure that the staircase is wide enough that we can have 2-way traffic going. We don't want one of those situations where somebody has to wait on the landing or somebody else to walk down the stairs. That's the issue with that corner over there right now. And so when you're coming around, so this may shift a little bit and that may have impacts with fellowship hall. We're gonna do the best we can, but we want to make sure that we're taking up the space. It's gonna actually be functional for the long run. And then the other thing is this staircase becomes far less used. So much of our fellowship stuff is here. We want to make that as tight as we can. It can be a one person direction so that we can reclaim a little more room in the fellowship hall, in the sacristy. Talking about the sacristy, can you flip to that? Because I know we have sacristans in the room. So here's where we kind of imagine the sacristy, where we've got hanging robes here. There's now a sink up there. So at this point, sacristans don't need to go downstairs. You can wash everything right there in the sacristy. There's storage under here. This right here is showing the current built-ins that we use for the sacristy. We're going to preserve part of them because they're so cool. And we're going to put them in over here. Additional storage, AV equipment storage. This is the sacramental sink. So this little sink right here. So you'll be able to then take the bread, put it in the wine, you're gonna let it break down, and then you're gonna pour it right through there, right outside to the ground. You don't gotta walk outside to return it to the earth. It's just gonna go right there for you. And so in that whole space, what we're trying to do is we've got a lot right now. Sacristan, fellowship host, this person, that person, everybody's crossing to go to different places in the building and kitchen. And so we're trying to make sure that we can tease that out. We heard from the council in their feedback session that it might be helpful to have a little fridge in there that we can have the juice and the bread and all that kind of stuff in as well. So those are the kind of things that we're also looking for feedback on in this next standpoint. I think I've said enough. Yes, this is the question and answer. And feedback.
Your rollers like that downstairs in the office, you might open them, but it looks like they would just open into the back.
Correct. So there will be a back on them. They're going to be more like bookshelves. So it's storage now. It's not dividers that you walk through, but it's rolling dividers that open to storage. So you could still put them down and look at them and be like, this looks nice. All the different people for like the architectural historians and stuff that come through the building, of all the things that they look at, they love looking at those doors and specifically the hardware on them. I've spent more time staring at that hardware over the past year with historical architects than anyone else. So I don't know, they're significant.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if you use a piano, it looks like in the plan.
Up here, yeah, this piano here, the plan is this piano is going to go downstairs to the large areas, and it might be over here. One of the, probably, we're kind of talking about this one being, yes, and that's going to be kind of one of the trade-offs, right? And so in talking with Dr. Jordan a bit about how we could, with all of this, right, when we redo this, there is going to be changes in how we operate, how we engage, right? And so we want to begin, this is why we're doing it now. We want to begin thinking about how are we going to change and how we operate. So we're imagining if we have an actual piano that works well downstairs, and maybe this is the choir area, maybe this is adult education, and we've got children's education, we got this, and this is the choir area. You could go downstairs where maybe the robes for choirs down here. So everyone's kind of gathering down there. And then when we need a piano up here, we could open up the dividers, use it in here. A lot of times when we've used that piano in this space for worship related things, it's been for like Easter Vigil and stuff like that, where now that we have to have cameras and a whole setup to live stream that, we really kind of have to be more in a sanctuary. And so that's why we transition things more in there. So there is kind of some give and take in that. And so this would probably be good enough for fellowship time. An annual meeting would probably need to be held down here, or if we get too big for that, God willing, we're in the sanctuary, right? Plenty of congregations have their annual meetings in the sanctuary. We've got plenty of space in there, right? So kind of just, we have to reimagine kind of how we use some of the space, but what are all the long-term benefits? So that's the input-output levers example, right?
Good question, two of them. Where in here would the wall be? Also, heating and cooling and power consumption downstairs in case another extension closed.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's been thought of because when we got the electrical redone 2 or 3 years ago, we had adequate power coming in. Correct. What do you think? There is things that we have.
Great question. I'll start with the last one. So the heating and cooling is all going to downstairs. So right now upstairs, we've got steam boiler system plus mini splits that give us supplemental heat plus air conditioning. Similarly, downstairs, we're gonna keep the hot water fired boiler system for major heat loads when it's like ridiculously cold out, like negative wind chills. And then we're gonna add in mini split system. So while this is like a mini split, like cassette type things, these are ones that go in like a 2x2 grid, like a hanging ceiling. So a lot of these spaces we're imagining ceiling tiles. It's gonna have additional acoustic separation because we have a lot of sound transfer between the two rooms, right? And so we're gonna make sure that we try to limit that, and then those will go in there. That will add air conditioning. The whole space will be air conditioned downstairs. It'll also add heating that we can use. Our electrical service was upgraded and can sustain that as of right now. So we did the initial MEP, so mechanical, electrical, plumbing, engineering. We looked good from that standpoint. We did a structural evaluation. We had a structural engineer come in. Looks good. There's no major like issues settling or anything like that. All of that got taken care of during this phase. So that's kind of for the heating and cooling component of that. Then for the, what was the other question? Oh, well, so that's a little bit more, this is where it's like somewhere here.
Because you're saying this is gonna go away.
Yeah, so like somewhere in here, that way. But I preface that with, we still gotta make sure that staircase is gonna actually be the right size. So this might move this way a little bit more. And then you'd have your little buffet, and then you could still have your, what is it, 6 tables is drawn there? 6 tables of
Yes.
8, and that's comfortable.
That's this group.
So this group of 8 could easily fit in there, comfortable. Could we get more in there? We won't tell the fire chief. Yeah.
Oh, so that thing over there is the 77, 77.
Yeah, that one over there.
Yeah.
Or the one in the narthex, I think was like 14 or something like that, or 21. But anyway. Did that answer your question?
It did.
So, if I'm reading this right, there's like a hallway that's going, these environments staying in exactly the same place?
Yep.
Okay, so there's like a hallway.
There's no hallway on the first.
This wall here is that wall there. So there would actually be double doors, kind of perpendicular to those double doors over there. So that's why this is narthex north. So you would come up these stairs, you would come out of the elevator, and you would be in a small space outside of those 2 doors, and then you would go into narthex outside the sanctuary, or you could hang a hard right and walk right into the fellowship hall. And we would have kind of the banquet line similar to what we have now, where you immediately upon entering the narthex hall, you would hang a right and have coffee and all that type of thing. This has definitely been the most discussed, I think, portion, because this is a big change, right? Like this is a change from how we use the fellowship hall currently. And this has been the thing that we've pushed ourselves in being, this is going to be an operational change. There's no question about that, because this space is going to get smaller. That being said, that's when we've had these conversations about a lot of things are stored up here. This space currently has to do everything for us, which won't be the case any longer. And so thinking about it that way, I think we're still going to have fellowship hall up here. It's such a great connection. It's such a great thing. And I mean, architecturally thinking about this, we're really just centering the space. I mean, most of the time we don't even have a table set up over there, and we're not even using that. And the piano's taking up real estate. And so I think when, it is going to be smaller. There's no question about that. But it will be more efficiently used and potentially better used. So, but it is a change, and I don't think there's any way to get this lift in. I mean, that's why we originally looked at the lift over here, was to keep this exactly the same way it was, and it was just, it's not possible. And so yeah, it's something to wrap your head around a little bit.
Can you go to the outside really quick too? I just want to add a couple more things into the outside. So if you remember the outside, this is our gathering garden. You'll notice that this gathering here, we actually have the walkway coming a little bit closer to naturally where people want to go, and then it'll kind of help direct them over to the side. We've got now 2 foot of border along here. This is all going to be plantings all along here. That existing gate is still going to be right there. And what we've tried to do with this doorway, that doorway already exists there. already there, already used for some groups. And so all that we're doing a little bit different is adding in a little like a piece of glass so that you can kind of see through a little bit better. And there'll be a little, maybe like a little metal awning, not like the tacky ones that you see at, you know, a funeral home or something like that. And we're going to be using some of the bricks to kind of carry that over. It's going to look very similar to all of the main entrances that we currently have. Yeah.
Is there any way I could get like a copy of that particular slide?
Yeah, all of it's going to be available online. Yeah. Now, remember, Joe, we're still in schematic, so things will definitely change. Yeah,
And how far is that line with schematic going out?
4 feet,
Or how far is it between my house and the church?
8 feet, I believe,
80?
or 6, one of the two.
Okay. This.
So this is gonna, I believe it's 6 feet because we're shortening this by 2, giving a 4-foot walkway, and 2 foot is now the garden area we talked about.
Okay, and is there gonna be a more advanced drawing of that pink area to see as well? And don't obviously it's quite really long.
Mhm.
Something like the dimensions.
So we can get dimensions off of this.
Yeah.
That's something that we can move towards. Well, what I can 100% assure you is that everything that we're doing is all on church property. None of it is bleeding over at all over the property line. It's all there, but we can definitely get you. And actually, you can see she put in here this is where the awning is there. So that's 4 foot. It kind of looks like it's shorter than the walkway there.
And it's,
But yeah.
and this is like something, and just so everyone knows, I live next to this is a singular issue. The interior part of the plan, okay, I have no problems, but Jason has been so incredibly open and helpful with this to me, but I feel like I'm probably the only member that's affected more than most.
Yeah,
Especially from the outside, since I live really next to it. So that's why I'm bringing this up, and I'd love to be able to provide as much feedback as I can.
Yeah.
Once it's a little bit, or once, I guess, it sounds like it is.
So this kind of design, and like, because we had the first iteration, which we talked about, that like actually had the walkway all the way on the lot line.
Yeah.
And so this one is doing that, pulling it 2 feet away from the lot line now, and actually having people come over this way. There's no benches, there's no smoker poles, there's no, because there wouldn't be anything that would be encouraging people to loiter or to stand on the lot line, right? I think especially this 2 feet area here, I think we really want to work with you to imagine, if we want to do some taller trees that are kind of like hedging along here, right? That can help block that so you're not seeing as much traffic. We want to work with you on that. I think the general layout of it, some of this might shift further this way or might go more diagonal, but I think this kind of opening up, and then this is all imagined as we had discussed, kind of more plantings along here, which hopefully will give some aesthetic beauty to you all. And then looking outside of what will be my office someday, if I'm still here when we build it, that would be beautiful to look out at greenery instead of our horrible broken up concrete up there right now. Yeah.
I can access the website.
Yeah, I can email this to you. You got the paper copy too, right? Of that.
But I don't think that the awnings.
Oh,
Yeah, I can get you that without a problem. With the caveat, which is true for all the things we're talking about. Everything is not exactly how it will be. I think this general, like where walkway might be, where wall generally will be within a foot or two, that's probably, does that sound right for
Yeah.
where we are schematic wise?
could it be a 3-foot awning? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. If you're like, hey, I think a 3-foot awning might be better. The idea behind the awning is more to give some kind of, you wouldn't first think to walk around the corner to go to the church office main entry, right? So something to designate, but we didn't want it wrapping around the corner to the front. So something that gives it a little bit of a like, hey, Pastor Jason's over here.
How about plans for signage? How many people have?
So there will be some kind of signage. Of course, I think that we're committed to making sure that it reflects the current signage that we have out of the corner, which is an historic sign. So it'll be something in that vein. We're not talking about electronic scrolling letters or blinking signs or anything like that. think a lot of us live in the city because we want the city and not the suburban feel. So we're gonna go less tacky awning, less blinky signs. Was that, maybe that was rude. You get paid to be here, so you get to be quiet. No. Other questions though, because I think we want to be really good neighbors, and we know that this is the shift for coming in that side, and so let's continue the process in talking with it. But it's likely that this is going to be in this next phase of work. So this is going to be coming sooner than some of the other things that we talked about. So we want to get that into a good place, and eventually we'll start talking landscape architecture, like what types of plants and what kind of bushes and what kind of, and that's something that we want to have a conversation with you, especially along the lot line here, and that it's still kind of going along with the native feel that we've been kind of curating there. And so here, because this does necessitate, we're going to cut the gate here. We're going to cut an opening here in the gate and then gate this off, right? So right now, this is a walkway, 6 foot, 8 foot something walkway along here that we own all the way on that side. So that's no longer going to be there. So we've intentionally tried to make it kind of separating.
Too, because like if people come in from the front.
Instead of walking all the way down here.
I would think most people would be this way.
Yeah, I mean, we want to encourage people to, again, use these doors on Sunday morning, but if you need to use this door, it makes the most sense. I mean, and also playing off of, the Gather Garden is really successful and kind of how it, blurs that area. So I think, again, the focus on these doors, and then, oh, by the way, if you need to use that entrance, small signage to direct you there.
Other question? Yeah.
We took over the kitchen. I just think commercial kitchen, what does it entail? How fleshed out is that? For like equipment, arranging the space, and like what sort of are the use opportunities? Say for members of the target, it's like thinking like the long term being able to like have more meals here. Say if someone cooks here rather than like brings food from home, or things of that nature, like church suburbs. There's a lot of opportunity there. Like what's the talk there? What's the kitchen gonna be like? How fleshed out and what kind of space used for that down the road?
Great question. So right now, essentially, our kitchen operates as a warming kitchen. It's not really a functional kitchen. This would include, so what we've got drawn in here, it's got a commercial grade stove and oven. It has the hood over the top, the exhaust, and the exhaust is not going to go out to our side neighbors. We're spending extra money to send it straight up to the top of the building. And so you won't have to smell all of the, hopefully, good smelling things in there. It's going to have a sink in there, commercial fridge, refrigerator. Right now it's got an island in there. It's got the 3-basin sink. It's got a commercial grade dishwasher that's in there. And so the exact layout we still will be playing with. None of the fixtures or any of that stuff has been picked, or countertop type or any of that stuff. There's a hand washing sink here. This is still a pass through into this area, and you've got the direct access of walkway into, like we're used to, a social hall kitchen kind of being connected, and you can get into the kitchen without needing to walk through the meeting space as well, right? So you've got 2 ways into that kitchen. And so that's kind of where we are right now. We did look, because I know a lot of people have been asking about it. We looked into the dumbwaiter. We looked into it a lot. It's going to require like an additional 3 foot by 3 foot space, and it needs to land itself into a good location upstairs. And unfortunately, just getting that to fit basically somewhere here, so it goes here, plus taking another 3 foot by 3 foot space out of the fellowship hall, didn't seem like something that would be worth probably like an extra $120,000 to get that in, when we're already spending a bunch for the elevator. So now what we can imagine is, if we're already doing most of our stuff upstairs, then we have a little cart. And so you put the egg bake on there, and you put the taco stuff and blah, 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 and you wheel your cart over here, and you take the elevator up, and now you just pop right up here and you set it up, right? So it's also going to be easier in that regard. So I know there was a lot of energy over the dumbwaiter. That was unfortunately one thing that kind of we needed to for both cost-wise and just for this. It gets to the point where we take the whole fellowship hall's gone. We don't even need to meet up here anymore because we've taken it up by dumbwaiter and lift and bathroom. Did that help answer your question?
Oven. Which one you call it, for the oven,
Stovetop.
range, the flat top, was, the flat top, the griddle.
It could. Some of that's going to depend on just like
That's still down the road.
that's still down the road. But it's all going to be commercial grade appliances, which include things like a stove, fridge, sink, dishwasher, and the range hood that will be vented to the top.
The fryer,
Probably not a fryer, but these kind of smaller details, this is leading nicely into our next thing, is we're building committee. If you want to have a say on smaller details, you should join the building and ground committee, because they will be tasked with, after the task force is done with the meeting a week from Thursday for our neighbors and space use group members, then they're going to turn it all over to the architect to begin working with them. And that's where we're going to get into what type of floor, and is it going to be brass or is it going to be silver and door handles, and is it going to be, 270K or 2700K or 33,000K light bulbs and all of that, right? Can't we wait for that, Rick?
Yeah, you got a message chat. And I'm gonna say, we actually could move more people in the building committee, because they decided that they had done waivers, and they pointed me out, so.
So
Lindsay's-
we're also looking at more inspections as well. Elmer's got inspected.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, oh yeah. That's another thing, dumbwaiter, if you put that in now, we have annual inspections for that. And then you have all the safety devices to make sure children don't go head down first on them. And all the, right, so those things add up very quickly. I'm looking at the time, we've been about an hour. Any kind of other feedback before I want to get into how we're gonna fund it, because this is all great, but without dollars in the pocket, none of this is happening, right? And so I want to give you a quick broad strokes overview of that. Any other questions or comments at this juncture? And please know, come talk to any of us. We can also send me an email if you want to list out all your points. And I think as a task force, as the pastor, I want to make sure that we walk away with this, that our neighbors, our space use groups, our congregation are all feeling like we did the best that we could to where we got. Are we going to get everything that we wanted? Is everything going to be perfect? No, it never is. But did we feel like we could do this together? We can respectfully disagree and understand the gives and takes. If we can get to the end of that, I'm saying it's a win for the congregation. So, any other things? So this, you probably can't see very, very well. The long and the short of it, this is all the money part with this. And so what we're kind of, so to do all of that that you saw is only near $6.75 million. And so if anybody would like to make a $3 million lead gift, I'll even take a $1 million lead gift. Come talk to me. We'll go to dinner. I'll take you wherever you want. We can make it work. The reality is that we are well aware that we're not going to be able to do all the things at once. And so, as I mentioned before, what we're kind of looking at for the next phase is that ADA entry, the outside, getting in, some select window replacement in the areas that we're already doing, then the family bathroom, central toilets, janitor's closet, washer, dryer. That's all kind of like, we're definitely doing that part. And if we can extend ourselves into the nursery, east meeting room, central hall, and lounge, we'd love to do that. That is all landing up to a 1.1, 1.79. And so this is, in talking with our fundraising consultant, they believe that we can do this based on the numbers they got and where we are. Now, mind you, we have put in a couple, we put in a lot of different grants. And so you all know, we already told you that we were awarded a $100,000 one-for-one matching grant specifically for the ADA accessibility entryway, plus $5,000 planning grant. We already spent that on the architect to get us to where we are today. Plus, we're getting some technical assistance. We also were awarded a $20,000 grant to support the ADA accessible entryway from the Metropolitan Chicago Synod. And we've put in for 2 citywide very large grants. And this is part of why we kind of had small team of us, right? So we're working on the schematic. We kind of had to pause, quickly shift to writing these. So we put in the City Adopt a Landmark Fund grant, talked to them a week ago Friday, and they told me it's running late. They're running behind a couple more weeks. So we're hoping to hear back by early November. We applied for a $2.99 million grant, and we know that that's really, really, really big. Because the biggest one that was awarded last cycle was 1.08. We don't think that we're going to get it all, but we hope that we can get a good chunk of it with that. We also applied for the Chicago Recovery Plan Community Development Grant. That is a long name for a grant. This one we applied for a $2.7 million grant. So they only will cover 75% of it. Our project was really unique. We had to go to them and say, so do we fall? Do we not? They don't usually do religious, but we're such a community center, blah, blah, blah. So hopefully we made a compelling argument for that. And they expect that we would hear back from them by 2023. So if any of those ones come through, right, that's going to expedite moving through this process. But this is assuming that we don't get any more grant funding. And that's where this next kind of phase 2 would be. And then we'd probably have a phase 3, maybe a phase 4, depending on how phase 2 goes with all of that. This also includes, construction estimates for inflation and all of that, plus things like architectural engineering fees, legal fees, permits, fixtures, furniture, equipment, so tables, chairs, all of that kind of stuff. That's all factored into here. These are rough numbers at this point with that. So part of what I wanted to share, though, as well with you, with that technical assistance, we had an economic halo effect study carried out by Partners for Sacred Places. And what they basically do is they sat down with me for like an entire day and asked me a gazillion questions about everything. And then I asked a whole bunch of you about things and staff. And they come up with kind of, what is our economic impact in this area? And so and you can read this whole report, it's on our website. Key findings of this, our impact from June 2022 to May 2023 was over $2 million of economic impact. This exceeds the national average for congregations that are historic and urban, many of who have education centers. If you look at this, got a big $0 because we don't have a school, and we are still having a larger economic impact than some that have schools. The average is $1.7 million annually. We were over 2 million. Like I cannot emphasize how big this is huge. This is huge when we start talking about when I've been meeting with elected officials, when I've been meeting with other business philanthropists. This is the kind of thing that they care about. What's your impact? How are you doing it? And it's because we're such a community hub, and the amount of service to the community that we do that really hypes that up. So you can see our biggest areas were individual safety net, individual impact, magnet effect. So that's basically like when y'all come here and then you stop at Starbucks on the way here, and now you're patroning Starbucks nearby, or you're going to Big Star for lunch afterwards. That's all magnet effect. You wouldn't necessarily be coming here to Wicker Park without Wicker Park Lutheran Church, and we pump more money into the economy because you're coming here. And then direct spending. So us, all of the landscaping contracts and snow removal contracts and do the roof and all that. That means direct spending and individual safety net. So this is like and these were questions that like I was asking Vicar Vicky and stuff. How many people have we counseled who had suicidal ideation, suicidal? There's a dollar amount that the government can put on preventing somebody from committing suicide. And so that goes into there. What does it look like to help somebody move towards permanent sustainable housing? What does it look like to have, so individual impact, the gathering garden out there, having green space that's publicly available to people, that adds to economic impact. And so all of these things kind of add up with that. So too, you might have been a part of our feasibility study. And so they conducted 36 interviews of members, donors, community members, and space use groups. Some of the things that they came back with is they said WPLC is a healthy and vibrant community that is aware of its assets and challenges. The people who came back and said, after they gave us the regular summary, they gave us what do they call it? It was for our council tree executive summary. They gave us an executive summary. And then I said, okay, we're ready for the final report, and then we can pay you the final thing. And she said, I don't know what else to tell you. She said, you guys are one of the healthiest congregations we've ever met. You don't have a lot of conflict going on. What conflict you do, you resolve it well. Like, you talk about money, you've got volunteers who are willing to step up. Yeah, everybody's got challenges in a post-COVID. So, they said a vibrant congregation that's serving the world. So what they believe is that $500,000 to $600,000 is what we can get out of congregation members. However, when we start putting that in light of grants that we got and other philanthropists in the area, they think that we can hit that 1.3 million. And that's why you saw that we've kind of got that range of the 1.1 to 1.79. 1.1, they think, oh yeah, you can get that. But I think we can get a little bit more. Maybe we could even get that whole way to get that done. So again, both of these studies, they're on wickerparklutheran.org/building. Read them, mark them up, come talk to me about them. Me and the council might be the only people and task force who have read them. We'd love to chat about them because I think they're cool. And so I think they're really, really important. So final slide, and then we're done. So next steps. We got funding up top. We've got building down here. 2023, 24, 25, 26, 27. As you heard in worship earlier today, I announced that there's a congregation meeting on November 12th. That meeting is going to be specifically called to approve the capital campaign and our fundraising consultants. And so the council cannot sign that contract because of the size that is, and they can't also choose to do a capital campaign. That is a congregation decision. And so at that November 12th meeting, we're going to say, all right, we've done all these feedback sessions. You've heard about it. What do you think? Are we doing this or not? That's going to be our decision point, which is then going to move us into what's called the silent phase with our fundraising consultant. I can also tell you, we're still doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff, trying to get things ready so that as soon as you guys say, do it, we're ready to start going. Then November through February, you're going to see material design, strategy, naming. We're going to be training volunteers. We're going to be more task force together. As I look around the room, almost all y'all I'm going to be talking to about being on a different task force. So we're going to be tapping you. And then we're going to start moving into March through August, that public phase, starting to talk to individual donors. We're going to be doing ongoing grant submissions. There's all sorts of stuff. And then we start getting into, okay, now we know about how much we got. And then it'll probably be a 3-year pledge fulfillment. So we'll say, what can you give over the next 3 years? And then we'll be able to figure out, okay, this is how much we raised. What's our next phase going to be? How are we going to leverage for that? Can we do some more ongoing grant submissions to get some more seed money for next phases? And so what we have going on at the same time with that, we're talking to you today about the schematic design and where we landed. After we kind of finish this up, we're going to move to design development, which for somebody who doesn't know what that means, basically it means now we're getting into the nitty gritty. What kind of stove are we going to have and what color carpet? Then it'll go into construction and permitting, and then it'll go to bidding. So then we're going to go out to a whole variety of different contractors and we're going to say, here's what we want to do. And really, I'm told over and over again by Jonathan, until we get to bidding, all of those monetary amounts are kind of unknown. They're the best guesses that we came up with inflation, but really until we get to this phase, we're not going to know exactly how much it is. So what it could be is, it could be even less. Maybe we don't even get to do any of the bathrooms. Maybe it's just ADA accessibility and the upfloor, right? It could be more. Maybe it's wow, and now we have offices too. We really won't know that until we get all the way to here. And we'll be coming back to you for another congregation meeting at this point, after we've selected the exact contractor we want to work with. We don't have the authority to sign off on that agreement. So we will come back to you and we will say, here is what we actually want to move forward with. Based on what you said you could give, based on what the cost is going to be, and with this contractor, we believe that we can do X, Y, and Z. Here's the final drawings. Here's what it's exactly going to look like. Here is all the dimensions. Are we a go? And then you all will decide, yes, we're a go, or no, we're not. And then that'll move us into the construction phase. So this is not the last time you're going to hear about these things. There's going to be at least one more meeting, maybe even more along the way, where we're going to have some touch points with them. But questions about next steps, funding, where we are, grants we've put in, any of that stuff. Yeah, right.
How are we financially? I mean, outstanding loans, debt, anything?
Great question. We have no loans, no debt, nothing. 3 years ago, I think it was, I know. So after we sold the parsonage, we didn't use any of that to pay back our debt, if you remember. That went into an endowment fund, and we don't touch the principal on that. That just churns off interest that goes into our annual operating budget. We did take a loan from ourselves when we had the flooding in the basement, and we were able to pay that off 2-3 years ago. I'm looking at a treasurer that maybe somewhere around there. In the last few years, we paid that off, so we don't owe ourselves anymore with that. Right now, our operating reserves, we have about enough that if y'all, like, for some reason, everybody stopped giving, we could keep doing what we're doing bare bones for about 4 months before we would need to, 4 to 5-ish months before we would need to, like, and we would start, unfortunately, having to pare things off, right? That's all the money stopped going, have to figure out, that office system position, that ain't going nowhere, right? Like, all that stuff. And so they usually say about 3 to 6 months reserve that you could do your operations, what you're looking for. So we're healthy there with that. But we're not going to be able to tap into that endowment fund. That's permanently restricted. None of that is going to be able to go to this. So it's all going to have to be fundraised through grants and additional donations from individuals above and beyond your regular annual giving. So it won't be something that is in place of our annual giving that has to be on top of. So this is a lot of times where people start looking at things like stocks or 401ks or things like that you can pull out, or putting things away. It's also over a 3-year time span, right? So you also have a much longer fulfillment period for something like that.
We have a stained glass window on going.
We do. Yeah, I think we've got about 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that range, $1,000. Now the window back there is like $84,000. So most of that is the fund is the stained glass window fund. So technically it can be used for any of them, but most of the intent behind it was for that stained glass window. Now that window was in one of the grants, the Adopt a Landmark grant. Yep, the rose window that's behind you. Yep. So the large rose window, that's the only window that hasn't been restored in the building. Yep. So, right. So if you look at it up front, it looks gross. And I've had lots of people say, I'll pay to clean it. And I'm like, okay, but it's not going to do anything because it's discolored by the sun, right? And so if you look at all of our other stained glass windows, what they've done is they put like a clear glass on there, and there's like an interstitial system that allows it to like weep and breathe and all that other stuff. So the same person who did all these windows, mostly on, I think, all under Pastor Ruth's time, right? Who did them all, Bodhi Studio, BOTTI, however you say it, I always get it wrong. I had him come out, he's the same one who did all of them. And he gave us support on that one. So it's going to be of that same vein, quality, same style, all of that kind of stuff. And it's really too bad. Before the pandemic, it was like $45,000 to do that. So we got to do this fast before it turns into like a $9 million project. Other questions, comments? Yeah, Elsie.
Friends group at all?
I did not mention the Building Friends group at all. So there is this group called Wicker Park Lutheran Building Friends. What we've started creating is a separate 501c3, hopefully 501c3 eligible, hopefully, organization. We've got articles of incorporation figured out. We have a board in place. I'm looking at Tammy because she's one of the people on the board, and a lawyer and been helping us with this. And so our next step is that we're going to be officially having a board meeting, bylaws, and we'll eventually be pursuing a 501c3 status. Why we're doing that and what their role is they're just there as a non-religious organization that helps to financially support the renovations to this building. So for people in the neighborhood who do not want to give to a church because they believe that it will be used religiously, what we can say is funds to that will specifically go to preserving the building and the community assets of the building, right? So things given to that wouldn't probably go for things like the sacristy, right? But they would go towards things like the meeting rooms downstairs and the bathrooms and the commercial kitchen. And so and this is where our consulting firm has been helping us with congregations like us that are in historic buildings. There's often donors who want to support historic architecture and community centers, but don't necessarily want to go for whatever reason. Maybe they're Jewish or they're Muslim or they're atheist, whatever it is. They don't want to give to a religious organization. This Wicker Park Lutheran Church Building Friends would allow them to be able to give to that, and a separate governing board would then be able to give it to the church for specific related things that are not religious. Since I've got at least 2 board members in the room, did I do a good job on that? I got approved. And that board is right now mainly just members of the congregation until we meet and get our bylaws. And then we're going to be actually inviting some of the relationships that we've been building over this last year. We have a bunch of great community partners that we've started talking with and working with, and they're excited about. And we're going to be inviting them to join that board as well, and inviting them to join some of these task forces, so that it's also going to be, this is going to be a community-led effort and not just a Wicker Park Lutheran Church-led effort. But remember, if you haven't heard me say it before, 2/3 of the time that this building is used, it's used by outside groups, non-Wicker Park Lutheran Church. So the majority of this time, this building is used as a community center. And so we're really emphasizing that. And we see that as a good in the neighborhood. My time here, I've seen at least 3 churches in the area close, which means more and more community space is being turned over. I think all 3 of them turned into residential. So that turns into residential, less community space, and then you also have bars, taverns, gathering centers. Those have been becoming more and more expensive as rents have been going up in this area. So it's harder and harder for small community organizations to rent spaces. So that's why we offer low-cost community space and make horrible business decisions on your behalf every single day because we support that community center. And so that's an important aspect of this whole process. Other questions, comments? Any other feedback on the design? We want to make sure we get that. You cannot vote ahead of time. So Robert's Rules of Order says that you have to have simultaneous debates. But you can join us on Zoom. Zoom will be allowed for that, and you can log on. You will count towards quorum. You just have to be there to hear the debate. Because it's supposed to, so Robert's Rules of Order says it has to be a deliberative thing. So you can't just have the information and make your decision. You have to be convinced by other people if the spirit moves as such. Other questions? Yep. Yeah. I think within the next, ideally, probably 7 to 10 days. So the 9th of November, we have our community space use. After that, we're taking all of the information, compiling it, passing it off to the architects. So we just need it by then. Yep. Other questions, comments? Lovely. If you want to go back and look at this again, I'm sure you all will watch it again later tonight. It will be on our webpage. Thank you so much. If you're able to help clean up as we go, dishes over there. We got a haul downstairs right now. Wouldn't it be great to have a dishwasher? Dishwasher already half full. Wouldn't it be great to have a commercial dishwasher and an elevator?